She offered shelter to alien outlaws in a sandstorm. The next day, an armada appeared at the desert. Wind howled like a wounded beast, sending sheets of fine amber sand scouring across the small settlement on the outskirts of Zorida's main colony. Most buildings hunkered down against the assault, their protective shutters sealed tight, all except for one, a quaint establishment with a hand-painted sign that swung precariously in the gale, Auntie Quirlin's Earth Cafe. Inside, Quirlin Smith hummed to herself as she wiped down the counter for the third time that hour. At 78, her hands showed the weathered map of a life well lived, but they moved with the precision of someone half her age. Her silver hair was neatly tucked beneath a white old-fashioned bonnet that had seen better days, and her kind eyes sparkled behind round glasses perched on her nose. The warm gray sweater with its subtle pattern hugged her comfortably over her tidy beige dress with its proper collar. "Looks like another quiet night, eh, Rex?" she said to the massive black Doberman lounging by the kitchen door. The dog raised his head, ears perked forward, a low growl rumbling in his chest. "What is it, boy?" Quirlin reached beneath the counter where her old laser rifle rested, a habit from her younger days when she'd served as a colonial explorer before settling into this remote outpost on Zorida, a planet whose climate reminded her of stories about Earth's long-lost Florida. The cafe door burst open with a bang, sand and wind whipping inside as two tall figures stumbled through. Quirlin's hand tightened on the rifle's grip, then relaxed as she assessed the newcomers. They were blue-skinned humanoid aliens with sharp features, their silver-white dreadlocked hair matted with blood and sand. Both wore heavy metallic armor scored with fresh blast marks. One leaned heavily on the other, clearly injured. "Well, don't just stand there letting all the sand in," Quirlin called out, her voice warm but commanding. "Close that door and come sit yourselves down before you fall down." The healthier of the two aliens, his face marked with tribal scarifications that identified him as a warrior of rank, stared at Quirlin with piercing eyes. "Human female. We require shelter from the storm. We can pay." Quirlin waved dismissively. "Payment can wait. First things first." She bustled around the counter, surprisingly spry for her age. "Sit him down there," she directed, pointing to a booth. "I've got a medkit somewhere." The injured alien's eyes widened as Rex approached, followed by a plump ginger cat that had materialized from somewhere beneath the tables. "Don't mind them," Quirlin assured as she returned with supplies. "Rex only bites if I tell him to, and Ginger there couldn't hurt a fly, though Lord knows she tries with those birds outside." As Quirlin tended to the wounded alien's injuries, the standing one watched with suspicious fascination. "Why do you help us, human? You know not who we are." Quirlin looked up, her hand steady as she applied a healing gel to a nasty gash. "You're two folks caught in a sandstorm who need help. That's all I need to know right now." She smiled warmly. "Besides, my cafe's been empty all day. I was starting to think I'd baked all these pies for nothing." The wounded alien winced as the gel sealed his wound, then looked up at Quirlin with an expression of bewilderment. "I have never encountered such kindness from a stranger." "Well then," Quirlin said, patting his hand gently, "you've been meeting the wrong strangers, dear. Now how about some hot spiced tea and a slice of apple pie? It's an Earth delicacy, my grandmother's recipe." As the storm raged outside, Quirlin served her unusual guests with the same warmth she showed everyone. By the time she'd finished regaling them with stories of her days as an explorer, even the stern warrior had relaxed enough to smile. "You two can stay in the small shed out back tonight," she offered as the hour grew late. "It's not fancy, but it's warm and dry. Sandstorms like this can last for days." The aliens exchanged glances before the leader nodded. "We accept your hospitality, Auntie Quirlin. We will not forget this kindness." Quirlin beamed at them. "Sit down, dears. Granny will make you a hot meal in no time." She handed them cool drinks with straws, her eyes twinkling with delight at having company. The wounded alien took a sip, then looked away quickly, but not before Quirlin caught the shimmer of moisture in his eyes. "Something wrong with the drink, honey?" she asked. "No," he replied softly. "It is just, I have not been shown such kindness since my youth. I had forgotten how it feels." Quirlin's heart swelled as she squeezed his shoulder gently. Well, you'd better get used to it while you're here. That's just how I talk. Outside, the sandstorm continued to rage. But inside Auntie Quirlin's Earth Cafe, an unlikely friendship had begun to bloom. The desert dawn broke with the gentle clarity that follows a violent storm. Quirlin rose with the sun as she always did, stretching her back with a series of pops and cracks that she cheerfully called her morning symphony. She hummed an old Earth tune as she prepared breakfast, expecting her unusual guests to be drawn by the aroma of fresh coffee and baking biscuits. But when she sent Rex to fetch them from the shed, the Doberman returned alone, whining softly. Gone already? Quirlin sighed, peering into the now empty shed. The blankets had been neatly folded, and the small space was tidier than when they had entered it. Oh, these young folks leaving without breakfast or pie for the road? She muttered with a smile, though there was a hint of disappointment in her voice. She returned to her cafe, opening the shutters to let in the morning light. The sandstorm had left impressive drifts against the western wall, but otherwise, her little establishment had weathered the storm intact. Quirlin was just setting out fresh napkins when the distinctive hum of approaching vehicles made Rex's ears perk up. Ginger, ever the cautious one, disappeared under a table. Visitors already? My, Quirlin said, adjusting her bonnet and smoothing her dress. Must be the Henderson boys from the mining outpost. They always show up like clockwork after a storm. Hungry as wolves. But the vehicles that pulled up outside weren't the battered mining rigs she expected. Instead, 3 sleek transports bearing the emblem of the Terran Colonial Defense Force parked in a perfect formation. The doors hissed open and 6 figures exited. But they weren't human soldiers. These were Krell, reptilian aliens with mottled green-gray skin and vertical pupils and yellow eyes. They wore stolen human military uniforms that fit poorly over their bulky frames, the fabric straining at their broad shoulders and thick necks. Quirlin watched through the window as they scanned the area, their movements unnaturally rigid as they attempted to mimic human military posture. Leading them was a larger Krell with captain's insignia hastily attached to his shoulders. The bell above her door chimed as they entered. "Good morning, gentlemen," Quirlin called out cheerfully, showing no sign of alarm. "Just in time for fresh biscuits. Coffee's hot, too." The Krell captain approached the counter while his companions spread out through the cafe, clearly searching for something or someone. "Human female," the captain said, his voice a hissing approximation of human speech. "I am Captain Martin Douglas, Terran Colonial Defense. We track dangerous fugitives in this sector. 2 Valerian males, likely armed. You see them?" Quirlin tilted her head, noting the awkward syntax and the way the alien's tongue flicked between words. Details no proper human disguise could hide. "Valerians? Those are the blue fellows with the lovely silver hair, aren't they? Like dreadlocks, but prettier?" "Yes, extremely dangerous. They suspected of sabotage against Terran mining operations in Outer Rim. They come this way?" Quirlin busied herself pouring coffee into mugs. "Such a terrible business. Would you like cream with that, Captain? It's real dairy. I have a friend who keeps goats out by the Eastern Ridge." "Human female, focus. This matter of colonial security." "Oh, I am focused, dear. A woman my age knows how to do 2 things at once." She slid a mug toward him. "Now, about those blue fellows. There were 2 who stopped in during the storm last night. Polite boys, if a bit rough around the edges. One was injured." The captain's scaled fingers tightened around the mug. "Where are they now? Gone when I woke up. Didn't even stay for breakfast, which is a shame because my apple pie is something special." She leaned forward conspiratorially. "Between you and me, I think they were in some kind of trouble. Had that hunted look about them." "Which direction they go?" the captain pressed. Quirlin shrugged. "Can't rightly say. They didn't leave a note or anything. Just folded the blankets nice and neat." One of the disguised Krell approached the captain. "Tracks found heading east. Recent. 2 individuals matching Valerian stride patterns." The captain nodded. "Thank you for cooperation, human." "Smith. Quirlin Smith. But everyone calls me Auntie Quirlin." She smiled warmly. "And you're quite welcome, though I haven't been much help." More than you know, the captain replied, dropping credits on the counter. For coffee. We go now. As the disguised aliens filed out, Quirlin called after them. Be careful out there, and if you find those boys, tell them they still owe me a proper goodbye. The captain paused at the door, looking back at her with cold reptilian eyes. If we find them, they face serious charges. They not just fugitives, they enemy combatants. Quirlin's smile didn't waver, but something in her eyes hardened just slightly. Well now, Captain, in my experience, there are always two sides to every story. You might want to hear theirs before you decide who the enemy is. The captain held her gaze for a moment longer, then nodded curtly and left. Quirlin watched through the window as the vehicles sped off toward the eastern ridge, leaving plumes of dust in their wake. Only when they were out of sight did she let out a long breath. Well, Rex, she said to the Doberman, who had remained protectively at her side, I do hope those blue boys know what they're doing. She scratched behind his ears thoughtfully. Those weren't humans at all. Krell in stolen uniforms, and they're hunting our guests with serious intent. Ginger emerged from her hiding place, rubbing against Quirlin's ankles. Yes, they're gone now, Quirlin assured the cat, and we've got a cafe to run. Those miners will be along soon enough, and they won't be happy if there's no pie waiting. As she returned to her baking, Quirlin couldn't help but wonder about her mysterious guests from the night before. There had been something in their eyes, not the look of saboteurs or terrorists, but of men fighting for something they believed in. Well, she murmured to herself as she rolled out dough, I suppose we'll never know the whole story now. Little did she know how wrong she was, or how soon the truth would arrive at her doorstep. The following morning dawned clear and bright, with no hint of the previous day's intrusion to mar the peaceful desert landscape. Quirlin had just finished serving breakfast to a group of human miners when Rex suddenly stood at attention, his ears forward and tail rigid. What is it, boy? Quirlin asked, wiping her hands on her apron. Not more of those Krell imposters, I hope. I'm running low on coffee after that last bunch. Nah, the answer came not as the rumble of ground vehicles, but as a deep, resonant thrumming that seemed to vibrate through the very air itself. The miners fell silent. Their forks paused midway to their mouths. What in the name of Earth's oceans is that? One of them muttered. Quirlin moved to the window, shading her eyes against the morning sun. What she saw made her gasp. Descending from the cloudless sky was a fleet of ships unlike any she'd seen in her long life. They were massive, elegant vessels with hulls that shimmered like polished abalone, their contours flowing in graceful curves that seemed to defy human engineering principles. Each bore markings in a luminescent silver that matched the color of the dreadlocked hair of her visitors from 2 nights before. Ha! Valerians, she whispered, recognition dawning, and quite a lot of them. The miners were already on their feet, some reaching for weapons, others simply staring in awe at the display of alien might. Folks, Quirlin announced calmly, I suggest you finish your breakfast quickly. I believe I'm about to have some rather important company. As the miners hurriedly paid their bills and departed, the largest of the Valerian vessels, a magnificent flagship at least 5 times the size of the others, settled onto the desert floor about 100 yards from the cafe. The sand beneath it crystallized from the heat of its engines, creating a glittering landing pad. Quirlin straightened her bonnet, brushed some flour from her dress, and stepped outside to greet her visitors. Rex padded faithfully at her side. A ramp extended from the flagship, and down it marched a procession of blue-skinned warriors in ceremonial armor that made the outfits of her previous guests look positively mundane by comparison. They formed 2 perfect lines, their posture impeccable, their silver-white dreadlocks adorned with gleaming metal beads and rings. Between these lines walked a figure whose presence commanded immediate attention, taller than the others by at least a head with broader shoulders and a bearing that spoke of absolute authority. This Valerian wore armor of a deep midnight blue inlaid with what appeared to be actual starlight. His dreadlocks were longer, falling past his shoulders, and each one tipped with a small crystal that caught the sunlight. Quirlin, never one to be intimidated, smiled warmly and called out, "Good morning. If you're here for breakfast, I'm afraid you might have to wait a bit. My oven only fits so many biscuits at once." The procession halted, The tall Valerian regarded her with intense eyes the color of a twilight sky, his expression inscrutable. Then, to the evident shock of his warriors, he smiled, a gesture that transformed his severe features into something almost handsome by human standards. "Auntie Quirlin Smith," he said, his voice deep and melodic, with an accent that somehow made her name sound like poetry. "I am Commander Doral Val, Royal Guardian of the Valerian Sovereign Territories and personal protector to our twin princes." He placed a fist over his chest and bowed deeply. "I come bearing the eternal gratitude of the Valerian people." Quirlin blinked in surprise. "Well now, that's mighty kind of you, Commander. But I'm afraid I don't quite understand what I've done to deserve such an impressive thank you, Committee." Commander Doral straightened, his eyes never leaving hers. "2 nights ago, during the Great Sandstorm, you sheltered 2 travelers. You tended their wounds, fed them, and provided sanctuary when they had nowhere else to turn." "Those boys were princes?" Quirlin's eyebrows shot up. "Well, I'll be." They didn't mention that over pie. "They were fleeing an assassination attempt," Doral explained, his voice lowering. "Prince Terran and Prince Kalen, the heirs to our throne. Had they been captured or killed, our entire civilization would have fallen into chaos." His expression softened. "Your kindness, human, saved not just 2 lives, but potentially millions." Quirlin waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, pish posh. I just did what anyone would do. They needed help, so I helped." Doral's eyes widened slightly. "Your modesty is as remarkable as your compassion, Auntie Quirlin. But the fact remains, you have earned the highest honor our people can bestow." He gestured, and one of his warriors stepped forward bearing an ornate box. "The princes insisted you receive this token of our gratitude." The box was opened to reveal a necklace of breathtaking beauty, a pendant of swirling silver metal, cradling a gem that seemed to contain a universe of stars within its depths. "Oh my," Quirlin breathed, genuinely moved. "It's beautiful. But really, it's too much for just some pie and bandages." "It is the Star of Valeria," Doral explained solemnly, "worn only by those who have rendered extraordinary service to our royal family. With it comes the protection and friendship of our people for all your days." His voice took on a note of urgency. "And I fear you may need that protection sooner than you know." Quirlin's eyes narrowed slightly. "Those visitors who came looking for your princes yesterday, they weren't real human soldiers, were they?" Doral's jaw tightened. "No! They were Krell mercenaries in stolen uniforms, hired by those who wish to see our royal line extinguished and our resources claimed by outsiders." "Well then," Quirlin said, her voice suddenly steely, "I suppose it's a good thing I sent them east when your boys actually went west, isn't it?" For a moment, Doral stared at her in astonishment. Then he threw back his head and laughed, a rich, genuine sound that seemed to surprise even his own warriors. "Auntie Quirlin," he said, shaking his head in wonder, "I begin to understand why the princes speak of you with such reverence. You are not at all what you appear to be." Quirlin's eyes twinkled mischievously. "Commander, at my age, that's the highest compliment you could pay me." She gestured toward her cafe. "Now, how about some real earth coffee while you tell me more about these Krill troublemakers who are after your princes?" Quirlin had just poured Commander Doral a cup of her strongest coffee when 2 more Valerian ships descended from the sky. Unlike the military vessels already present, these were smaller, more ornate craft with royal insignia prominently displayed on their gleaming hulls. "The princes," Doral said, rising immediately to his feet. "They insisted on thanking you personally, despite my objections regarding their safety." Quirlin smiled, adjusting her glasses. "Well, I did make them promise to come back for breakfast sometime." As they stepped outside, the royal vessels landed gracefully beside the commander's flagship. The ramps extended, and down walked 2 familiar blue-skinned figures, now dressed in magnificent royal attire that made their previous armor look positively mundane. "Auntie Quirlin," called the younger of the 2, his face lighting up with genuine warmth. "Your pie saved the Valerian monarchy." Before Quirlin could respond, Rex began barking frantically, his attention focused not on the approaching princes, but on the sky above. Doral's communication device emitted a series of urgent tones. Proximity alert, he growled, his expression darkening. Multiple vessels entering atmosphere. He barked orders into his communicator, and immediately the Valerian warriors began moving into defensive positions. The Krell? Corlin asked, already guessing the answer. A full battle fleet, Doral confirmed grimly. They must have tracked the royal vessels. The sky darkened as dozens of angular predatory-looking ships descended, their hulls a sickly green-gray that reminded Corlin of the skin of the disguised soldiers who had visited her cafe. Get the princes to safety, Corlin said firmly, already heading back toward her cafe. I'll be right back. Auntie Corlin, you should evacuate with... Doral began, but she was already through the door. Inside, Corlin moved with surprising speed for a woman her age, heading straight for the bar. She reached underneath and pulled out not just the laser rifle the commander had expected, but an entire cache of weapons that would have made a colonial marine whistle in appreciation. When she emerged, she was carrying a heavy-duty plasma cannon that looked absurdly large in her small hands. Doral stared at her in astonishment. Explorer Corps, retired, she explained with a wink. Did you think I baked pies my whole life? The first Krell ships opened fire, their energy weapons carving glowing furrows in the desert sand. The Valerian vessels returned fire, creating a spectacular light show above the cafe. A stray Krell blast struck the corner of Corlin's beloved establishment, shattering the window and sending fragments of her prized china collection raining across the floor. Oh no, my dear, she declared, her voice suddenly steely as she raised the plasma cannon. No one touches the T-sets. With a precision that left Doral speechless, Corlin fired a single powerful blast that caught a diving Krell fighter squarely in its engine housing. The ship spiraled out of control before exploding in a spectacular fireball. 20 years in the Explorer Corps, she explained, noting his expression. I specialized in first contact and diplomatic missions, but they made sure we could handle ourselves. A second blast from her cannon disabled another Krell vessel, and suddenly the Valerian warriors were looking at the elderly human woman with newfound respect. Commander, one of the princes called out, we need to get to higher ground for a tactical advantage. Doral nodded, then turned to Corlin. You know this terrain. Where can we establish a defensive position? Corlin's eyes lit up. The eastern ridge has a network of caves I explored years ago. The narrow passes would funnel their ground forces, and the high points would give us excellent firing positions on their air support. You have a tactical mind, Auntie Corlin, Doral said, his deep voice carrying a note of admiration that wasn't there before. I have experience, Commander, she corrected him with a smile that made his blue skin darken slightly around the cheeks. Now shall we move before they land those troop carriers I see approaching? As they organized a swift retreat to the eastern ridge, Corlin found herself working alongside Doral with an efficiency that suggested they'd been partners for years rather than hours. She directed the Valerian forces based on her knowledge of the terrain, while he implemented her suggestions with the precision of a seasoned military commander. In the midst of the chaos, their hands brushed as they both reached for the same tactical display. Corlin felt an unexpected jolt of awareness at the contact. His skin was warmer than a human's, with a subtle texture that reminded her of fine suede. Doral seemed equally affected, his twilight eyes widening slightly as they met hers. For a heartbeat, the battle around them seemed to fade. Your species continues to surprise me, Auntie Corlin, he said softly. Just Corlin, please, she replied, suddenly feeling decades younger than her 78 years. Auntie is for the youngsters. His lips curved in a smile that transformed his severe features. Corlin, then. The moment was shattered by a nearby explosion as a Krell missile struck the sand. Doral instinctively shielded her with his much larger body, his armor absorbing debris that would have struck her. We need to move now, he said, his voice husky with an emotion Corlin couldn't quite identify. Stay close to me. As they made their way toward the eastern ridge, leading the princes and the Valerian warriors through the terrain, Corlin knew like the back of her hand. She found herself hyper-aware of Doral's presence beside her, the fluid grace of his movements, the authority in his voice as he issued commands, the protective way he positioned himself between her and any potential danger. It had been many years since Corlin had felt this particular flutter in her chest. Her late husband had been gone for over a decade, and she'd assumed that certain feelings had retired along with her commission. Apparently, she'd been wrong. "The main cave entrance is just ahead," she said, pointing to a nearly invisible crack in the rock face. "It opens up inside. Plenty of room for your people." Doral studied her face with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "You continue to be much more than you appear, Corlin Smith." "Stick around, Commander," she replied with a boldness that surprised even herself. "I'm just getting warmed up." The main cave system proved more spacious than the Valerians had expected, easily accommodating the princes and their guards. Torches and portable light units cast a warm glow over the rough stone walls, revealing ancient carvings that predated human settlement on Zoraida. Corlin watched as Doral organized his forces with efficient precision, positioning lookouts and establishing a defensive perimeter. The princes were safely ensconced in the deepest chamber, protected by their personal guards, while the commander oversaw the broader strategy. When he finally approached her again, his twilight eyes held a mixture of respect and curiosity. "Your knowledge of this terrain is proving invaluable, Corlin." She smiled, running her fingers along one of the ancient carvings. "I spent my first 5 years on Zoraida mapping these cave systems. The original inhabitants, long gone now, left behind quite the underground network." Doral's brow furrowed. "Network? You mean these caves extend beyond what we see?" "Oh my, yes," Corlin replied, her eyes twinkling behind her glasses. "What you're seeing is just the tourist section, so to speak. There's an entire labyrinth that runs beneath the eastern ridge, passages that connect to points miles from here." The commander's expression shifted to one of tactical interest. "Could these passages allow us to outflank the Krell forces?" "They could indeed," Corlin confirmed. "There's an exit point that opens about half a mile behind where their ground forces are currently establishing position. They'd never see us coming." "Show me," Doral said immediately. Corlin hesitated. "The passages get rather narrow in places. Your armor." "I can remove the bulkier pieces," he replied without hesitation. "This could be our advantage, Corlin. We need to scout this route immediately." After briefing his second-in-command and ensuring the princes remained well protected, Doral followed Corlin to a seemingly solid rock wall at the back of one of those smaller chambers. She pressed her palm against a specific spot, and to Doral's amazement, a section of the wall slid silently aside, revealing a dark tunnel beyond. "The original inhabitants had quite the knack for engineering," Corlin explained, activating a small light she'd attached to her collar. "This way." As promised, the passage soon narrowed, forcing Doral to remove his ceremonial shoulder guards and chest plate. Underneath, he wore a form-fitting black bodysuit that accentuated his powerful physique, a fact that didn't escape Corlin's notice. "You're staring, Corlin," he said, a hint of amusement in his deep voice. "Just making sure you can fit through the next section," she replied smoothly, though the slight flush in her cheeks told a different story. The tunnel grew increasingly narrow, forcing them to walk single file, with Corlin leading the way. In the confined space, the air seemed to grow warmer, charged with an awareness that had nothing to do with the Krell threat outside. "These marking," Doral said, his voice sounding unusually intimate in the close quarters as he indicated the glyphs on the walls. "Can you read them?" "Some," Corlin admitted. "They tell the history of Zoraida, or at least how the original inhabitants experienced it. This section speaks of great warriors from beyond the stars who came to their aid during a time of crisis." "Not unlike our current situation," Doral observed. "History has a way of repeating itself," Corlin agreed, "though I doubt those ancient warriors were as handsome as you." The words slipped out before she could stop them. In the narrow confines of the tunnel, there was nowhere to hide her sudden embarrassment. Doral's step faltered momentarily. When he spoke, his voice had dropped to a register that sent a pleasant shiver along Corlin's spine. "Valerians do not typically receive compliments on our appearance from other species. Most find us intimidating." Corlin glanced back over her shoulder, her light catching the angles of his face. "I've never been easily intimidated, Commander." "No," he agreed, his eyes holding hers. "That much is abundantly clear." They continued in silence for several minutes, the air between them charged with unspoken awareness. When the tunnel abruptly opened into a small chamber with a ceiling just high enough for Doral to stand upright, both seemed relieved to have more space, and yet paradoxically disappointed by the increased distance between them. "We should rest a moment," Corlin suggested, settling onto a smooth stone ledge. "The exit is still about 20 minutes ahead." Doral nodded, remaining standing as he studied the chamber. "Your species continues to fascinate me, Corlin. Well, humans adapt to any environment, form connections with any species, face dangers without hesitation." "We're stubborn that way," she replied with a smile. "It served us well in the galaxy." "It's more than stubbornness," he said, moving to sit beside her on the ledge. "There is a warmth to humans that my people lack. We are bound by duty, honor, tradition. You are bound by—" He searched for the word. "Heart," Corlin supplied. "Though we have plenty of duty and honor, too." "Heart," he repeated as if tasting the word. "Yes, that explains much about you." In the dim light, his blue skin had taken on a deeper hue, and Corlin found herself wondering if it would feel as warm as it had when their hands had touched earlier. As if reading her thoughts, Doral's hand moved to cover hers where it rested on the stone between them. "In Valerian culture," he said quietly, "age brings respect, wisdom, authority. It is seen as the height of one's power and appeal." Corlin's breath caught slightly. "Is that so?" "On Earth, youth tends to be prized above experience." "A foolish perspective," Doral replied, his thumb tracing a gentle pattern on the back of her hand. "Your years have clearly made you more, not less." The air in the chamber seemed to grow thicker, charged with possibility. Corlin turned to face him fully, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting, how the dim light softened his warrior's features. "Commander," she began, but he gently interrupted. "Doral," he corrected. "When we are alone, I would hear my name from your lips." "Doral," she repeated, the name feeling right in her mouth. "I think we should acknowledge what's happening here." His twilight eyes held hers steadily. "And what is that, Corlin?" "Something unexpected," she answered honestly. "Something that probably makes no sense given our different species, our ages, the fact that we met 3 days ago, and that we're currently hiding in a cave from an alien invasion." A smile, rare and transformative, curved his lips. When stated that way, it does sound rather improbable. "And yet," Corlin continued, finding courage in his smile, "here we are." "Here we are," he agreed, his free hand rising to gently touch her cheek. "I find myself drawn to you in ways I cannot fully explain. Your courage, your wisdom, your unexpected fierceness in battle, all of it calls to something in me." The touch of his fingers against her skin sent a cascade of sensations through Corlin's body, awakening feelings she had thought long dormant. With a boldness that surprised even herself, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. For a heartbeat, Doral went completely still. Then with a sound that was half growl, half sigh, he responded, his arms encircling her with careful strength as the kiss deepened. What followed was a discovery of differences and surprising similarities. The texture of his skin against hers, the way his silver-white dreadlocks felt twined around her fingers, the unexpected heat that built between them as barriers both physical and metaphorical fell away. In that hidden chamber far from the battle raging above, Corlin and Doral found a connection that transcended species and circumstance, a meeting of equals who recognized in each other something rare and precious. Afterward, as they lay together on Doral's discarded cloak, Corlin traced the patterns on his blue skin with wondering fingers. "Well," she said softly, "that was certainly not how I expected this scouting mission to go." Doral's laugh rumbled through his chest beneath her ear. "Nor I. But I find I have no regrets." "None here either," she assured him, pressing a kiss to his shoulder. "Though we should probably continue our actual mission before they send a search party." With reluctance tempered by duty, they dressed and resumed their journey through the ancient passages, though now they walked hand in hand where the tunnel allowed it. As Corlin and Doral approached the tunnel exit, they moved with the synchronized precision of longtime partners rather than recent acquaintances. Their newfound intimacy had created an unspoken language between them. A glance, a subtle gesture, the lightest touch communicating volumes. Doral raised his hand, signaling Corlin to halt as they neared the concealed opening. He activated a small scanner on his wrist guard, frowning at the readings. "Something's wrong," he whispered. "There's a massive energy signature directly above us." Corlin crept forward, peering through a tiny fissure in the rock. What she saw made her blood run cold. The Krell had positioned an enormous cannon-like device on the ridge, its barrel pointed directly at the main cave entrance. "That's a seismic disruptor," she breathed. "They're going to collapse the entire cave system." Doral's expression hardened. "With the princes inside. And about 50 of your warriors," Corlin added grimly. "We need to split up. You have to warn them. Get them out through the secondary tunnels I showed your lieutenant." "And you?" Doral asked, though his tone suggested he already knew, and dreaded her answer. Corlin patted the compact blaster at her hip. "Someone needs to disable that cannon before they fire it. I'm smaller, less likely to be spotted, and I know a thing or two about Krell technology from my explorer days." Doral's jaw tightened, the muscles working beneath his blue skin. "It's too dangerous. The Krell would show no mercy if they captured you." "Good a thing they won't catch me then," Corlin replied with a wink that belied the seriousness of the situation. "Besides, I've got a better plan than just walking up and saying hello." Before Doral could object further, a new sound reached them, the distinctive roar of human military engines cutting through the atmosphere. They both looked up instinctively, though the solid rock above prevented them from seeing anything. "The Colonial Defense Force," Corlin said, hope rising in her voice. "They must have picked up the Krell signatures. Standard protocol would be to respond to any unauthorized Krell presence in human-settled systems." "This changes our tactical position," Doral acknowledged, his military mind already recalculating, "but it doesn't eliminate the immediate threat of that cannon." Corlin squeezed his hand. "All the more reason for us to act now. The human ships will engage the Krell in orbit, creating a distraction. You evacuate the caves, I'll disable the cannon." Doral pulled her to him suddenly, his powerful arms encircling her with careful strength. "You've awakened something in me I didn't know existed, Corlin Smith," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "A feeling beyond duty or honor?" Corlin's heart swelled as she returned his embrace. "I believe the human word you're looking for is love, Commander." "Love?" he repeated as if testing the word. "Yes, simple, yet vast." "That's the thing about humans," she said softly. "We tend to simplify the complex and uncomplicate the simple." His twilight eyes searched hers. "Promise me you will exercise extreme caution. I have only just found you. I have no wish to lose you to Krell barbarians. I promise to be as careful as a human grandmother with a blaster can be when sabotaging alien weaponry," Corlin replied with a smile. "Now go, save your princes. I'll meet you at the rendezvous point we discussed." With visible reluctance, Doral pressed his forehead to hers, a Valerian gesture of deep affection, before turning to make his way back through the tunnel. Alone now, Corlin took a deep breath, centering herself as she had been taught in the Explorer Corps. She checked her blaster, confirmed the small explosive charges she always carried were secure in her pocket, and then carefully widened the fissure in the rock until she could slip through. Outside, chaos reigned in the sky above. Human military vessels, sleek practical designs that prioritize function over aesthetics, engaged the more numerous but less maneuverable Krell ships. Energy weapons crisscrossed the atmosphere, creating a deadly light show. Corlin used the distraction to her advantage, keeping low as she navigated the rocky terrain toward the massive cannon. The Krell operators were focused on their preparations, their reptilian features set in expressions of cold determination. As she crept closer, Corlin could hear the distinctive hissing language of the Krell. Though she wasn't fluent, her explorer training had included basic comprehension of major galactic languages. "Human ships unexpected," one was saying. "Accelerate firing sequence." "Charging at maximum," another replied. "Collapse sequence in 3 minutes." Corlin's heart raced. 3 minutes wasn't much time. She needed a diversion. Fortune favored her as a human missile struck a nearby Krell ship, sending it spiraling toward the ground. The resulting explosion drew the attention of most of the Krell operators, giving Corlin the opening she needed. With the agility that had made her legendary in the Explorer Corps, she darted from her hiding place and approached the cannon from its blind spot. The access panel was exactly where she expected it to be. Krell technology hadn't changed much in the decades since she last encountered it. Her fingers worked swiftly, bypassing security measures and accessing the core programming. Just as she was about to input the destabilizing sequence, a shadow fell across her. "Human female," hissed a voice that sent chills down her spine. "Step away from weapon?" Corlin turned slowly to find herself facing the Krell captain who had visited her cafe, the one who had posed as Captain Martin Douglas. His reptilian eyes held no recognition, only cold hatred. "Well now," Corlin said, her voice steady despite the blaster pointed at her chest. "Isn't this awkward?" "I was just admiring your equipment here. Remarkable engineering." The Krell's eyes narrowed. "You sabotage. You die now." "That seems a bit extreme for a first offense," Corlin replied, her mind racing for a solution. "Besides, I think you've got bigger problems at the moment." She nodded toward the sky, where a massive human dreadnought had just broken through the cloud cover, its weapon systems targeting the Krell positions. The momentary distraction was all she needed. With a movement too quick for the Krell's reflexes, Corlin drew her blaster and fired, not at the captain, but at the cannon's exposed power coupling. The resulting explosion was smaller than she'd anticipated, but effective. The cannon's control panel erupted in sparks and smoke, the weapon's ominous hum dying away. The Krell captain roared in fury, raising his weapon. Before he could fire, a blue blur tackled him from behind, Doral, who had doubled back after ensuring the evacuation was underway. "I thought I told you to stay with the princes," Corlin said as Doral efficiently subdued the Krell captain. "They are safely away," Doral replied, his eyes never leaving hers even as he restrained the struggling alien. "My second in command is quite capable. I found I could not leave you to face this danger alone." "My hero," Corlin said, the teasing tone unable to hide the genuine emotion beneath. A series of explosions from the ridge above signaled that the human forces were systematically destroying the remaining Krell positions. In the sky, the battle was clearly turning in favor of the combined human and Valerian ships. "It appears your species has excellent timing," Doral observed, securing the unconscious Krell captain with restraints. "We do try to make an entrance," Corlin agreed, moving to his side. "Though I had things well in hand, you know." Doral's serious expression softened as he looked down at her. "Of that, I have no doubt. Nevertheless, I find I prefer fighting at your side rather than wondering if you are safe." The tenderness in his voice made Corlin's heart skip a beat, a sensation she hadn't experienced in decades. "Well then, Commander," she said, taking his hand, "shall we finish this fight together?" 3 weeks after the battle that locals were already calling the skirmish at Corlin's cafe, Corlin stood amid the ruins of her beloved establishment, hands on her hips as she surveyed the damage. The Krell bombardment had reduced most of the structure to rubble, though miraculously her prized collection of antique earth teapots had survived in their reinforced display case. "At least something made it through," she murmured to Rex, who sat faithfully at her side. Ginger was perched on a remaining section of counter, fastidiously grooming herself as if nothing had changed. The sound of approaching footsteps made Corlin turn. A human colonial official in a crisp uniform was picking his way through the debris, datapad in hand. "Mrs. Smith," he called. "I'm Administrator Harlow from the Colonial Relocation Office. I've been sent to discuss your situation." Corlin adjusted her glasses, which had acquired a slight crack during the battle but remained serviceable. "My situation seems pretty clear, young man. I need to rebuild." Harlow cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Actually, ma'am, that's what I've come to discuss. Given recent events, the Colonial Authority feels it would be safer to relocate you to the main settlement. We've prepared accommodations and—" "Relocate?" Corlin interrupted, her voice sharp. "This has been my home for 15 years, Administrator. I'm not going anywhere. With respect, Mrs. Smith, this location has proven to be strategically vulnerable. The incident with the Krell was a one-time event triggered by extraordinary circumstances," came a deep, resonant voice from behind them. Corlin's heart leapt as Commander Doral approached, resplendent in his formal armor. In the weeks since the battle, he had been occupied with diplomatic matters, though he had visited her temporary quarters whenever possible. Their relationship had deepened with each encounter, transcending the cultural barriers between their species with surprising ease. "Commander Doral," Harlow acknowledged stiffly, "this is a human colonial matter." "Is it?" Doral replied, his twilight eyes fixing the administrator with an unnerving stare. "I believe you'll find that as of this morning, it is not." He produced an ornate scroll bearing the royal seal of Valeria. "By decree of Princes Terran and Kalen, this land and a surrounding area of 5 kilometers has been designated as a Valerian cultural embassy, with the full agreement of your colonial governor, I might add." Harlow's jaw dropped. "A Valerian embassy? Here? But that's unprecedented." "Many things about recent events have been unprecedented," Doral agreed, moving to stand beside Quirlin. His hand found hers, their fingers intertwining in a gesture that did not go unnoticed by the administrator. "Including the formation of the first formal alliance between our peoples?" Quirlin squeezed Doral's hand, looking up at him with a mixture of surprise and delight. "You didn't mention this during your last visit." "The final agreements were only signed this morning," Doral explained, his usually stern features softening as he gazed down at her. "The princes were most insistent that your cafe be rebuilt as a symbol of human Valerian friendship." "And what about the owner of said cafe?" Quirlin asked, her eyes twinkling. "Do I get any say in this grand diplomatic gesture?" "That," Doral said, his voice dropping to a more intimate register, "depends on your answer to another question entirely." Administrator Harlow, sensing the shift in atmosphere, cleared his throat awkwardly. "Perhaps I should come back another time." Neither Quirlin nor Doral acknowledged his departure as the commander produced a small box from within his armor. Inside lay a ring unlike any Quirlin had seen, a band that appeared to be made of flowing liquid silver, set with a stone that contained swirling galaxies of light. "In Valerian tradition," Doral explained, "when a warrior finds his heart's match, he offers a ring crafted from the metal of his first ceremonial armor, set with a stone from his family's ancestral lands." His voice took on a note of uncertainty rare for the confident commander. "I understand human traditions differ, but I hope—" "It's perfect," Quirlin breathed, genuinely moved. "But Doral, are you certain?" "I'm human, I'm older." "Age brings wisdom and power among my people," he reminded her, taking her hand. "And as for being human, that is precisely why I love you. Your warmth, your courage, your ability to make a home anywhere in the galaxy." His twilight eyes held hers. "I am asking you to make a home with me, Quirlin Smith, here in this place where our worlds first collided." Quirlin felt tears welling in her eyes, happy tears that she made no attempt to hide. "You know, when I offered shelter to 2 strangers in a sandstorm, I never imagined it would lead to all this." "Is that a yeah?" Doral asked, a rare smile transforming his severe features. "It's an absolutely," Quirlin replied, standing on tiptoe to kiss him as he slipped the ring onto her finger. The sound of approaching ships made them look up. A fleet of Valerian construction vessels was descending, accompanied by human colonial transports laden with building materials. "The reconstruction begins today," Doral explained as Quirlin gazed in wonder at the coordinated effort. "The princes insisted it be ready for our bonding ceremony in 3 weeks' time." "3 weeks?" Quirlin laughed. "That's hardly enough time to plan a proper wedding." The royal architects have incorporated all your specifications," Doral assured her, "including an expanded kitchen for your famous pies, and proper accommodations for Rex and Ginger." As if understanding they were being discussed, the Doberman woofed softly while the cat merely flicked her tail in acknowledgement. "And what about accommodations for a certain Valerian commander?" Quirlin asked with a mischievous glint in her eye. "I seem to recall you finding my small bed rather constraining during your visits." Doral's blue skin darkened slightly around his cheeks, the Valerian equivalent of a blush. "That has been addressed as well," he admitted, "though I found our close quarters had certain advantages." Their shared laughter was interrupted by the arrival of a particularly ornate Valerian vessel. The ramp extended, and down walked the twin princes, now fully recovered from their ordeal. "Auntie Quirlin," Prince Terran called out, using the nickname that had stuck despite her protests, We've come to oversee the construction personally. No detail will be overlooked for the woman who saved our lives and brought our people together with humanity." As the princes approached, followed by a contingent of human colonial officials, Quirlin felt a momentary pang of uncertainty. Her simple life had been utterly transformed in less than a month, from running a quiet cafe to becoming the central figure in an interspecies alliance, engaged to a Valerian commander, with her humble establishment about to be rebuilt as an embassy. Sensing her thoughts, Doral leaned down to whisper in her ear. Having second thoughts? Quirlin looked up at him, at the love and respect shining in his eyes, then at the bustling activity around them as humans and Valerians work side by side to create something new from the ruins of her cafe. "Not a single one," she assured him, squeezing his hand, "though I do have one condition." "Name it," Doral said immediately. Quirlin's eyes twinkled with mischief. "The new cafe needs a sign that reads, 'She offered shelter to humanoid alien male outlaws in a sandstorm.'" The next day, an alien armada appeared at her cafe. Doral's rich laughter joined hers, drawing curious glances from the princes and officials. "An accurate, if lengthy, historical record," he agreed, pulling her close. "Though perhaps we should add, and found love among the stars." As the sun set over the desert, casting the reconstruction site in golden light, Quirlin stood in the circle of Doral's arms, watching humans and Valerians working together to build not just a cafe, but a bridge between worlds, all because she had offered shelter to strangers in a sandstorm. Some might call it fate. Quirlin preferred to call it simply being human.